The gunshot that missed Vivian Murphy's head by mere inches on a scorching afternoon in 1873 was the first of many reasons she swore to never love again. Dust scattered around her boots as she pressed her back against the weathered wall of the saloon, her heart thundering in her chest like a stampede of wild horses. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and she cursed the day she'd ever set foot in the unforgiving town of Crimson Creek, Wyoming territory. "I warned you, Vivian." The drunken voice of her former employer, Henry Wilcox, bellowed from across the street. "Nobody steals from me, and lives to tell about it." "I didn't steal anything," she shouted back, her throat raw from the dry air. She hadn't taken a penny that wasn't rightfully hers, just her wages after he'd tried to cheat her. Working as a barmaid in his establishment had been her only option after arriving in town 3 months ago with nothing but the clothes on her back and painful memories trailing behind her like shadows. The second shot splintered wood inches from her shoulder, sending her scrambling toward the alley. She needed to run, but where? In a town this small, there weren't many places to hide. The thunder of approaching hoofbeats made her pause. A rider appeared at the end of the street, silhouetted against the setting sun. The stranger dismounted with fluid grace that spoke of a lifetime in the saddle. His tall frame blocked the sun as he stepped between her and Wilcox. "That's enough," the stranger said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who rarely needed to raise it to be heard. "This ain't your business, cowboy," Wilcox snarled, his pistol wavering slightly in his drunken grip. "You're firing a weapon in the middle of town. That makes it everybody's business." The cowboy didn't draw his own gun, which struck Vivian as either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish. Wilcox spat in the dust. "That woman stole from me." "Did she?" The cowboy turned slightly, and Vivian caught her first clear glimpse of his face, sun-bronzed and weathered, with eyes the color of a summer storm. "Madam, did you steal from this man?" "No," she said firmly. "He refused to pay my wages, claiming I broke too many glasses. I took what I earned, nothing more." The cowboy nodded, turning back to Wilcox. "Seems straightforward enough." "Cole Osborne," said a new voice as the town sheriff approached, looking thoroughly irritated. "Should have known it'd be you causing a disturbance 5 minutes after riding into town." The cowboy Cole shrugged. "Wasn't me firing shots in the street, Sheriff." "Wilcox, give me that gun before you hurt someone," the sheriff demanded. "And go sleep it off. We'll sort this out tomorrow." He turned to Vivian. "Miss Murphy, you all right?" She nodded stiffly, not trusting the sheriff any more than she trusted anyone else in this godforsaken town. When Wilcox finally stumbled away, muttering threats, the sheriff sighed. "Miss Murphy, you got somewhere to stay tonight? Might be best to lie low until he cools down." "I'll figure something out," she replied, though in truth, her room had been above the saloon, a room she couldn't return to now. The sheriff shook his head and walked away, leaving her alone with Cole Osborne. "Thank you for intervening," she said coolly, "but I can manage from here." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight? That's not your concern. It is if there's a drunk man with a gun looking for you." He gestured to his horse. "I've got a small ranch outside of town. There's a spare room, door locks from the inside. You'd be safe there until this blows over. I don't need charity from a stranger. Not charity, just decent human behavior." He offered a small smile that transformed his rugged face. "Besides, my housekeeper would skin me alive if she found out I left a woman in danger. Mrs. Holloway is 70 years old and terrifying." Despite herself, Vivian felt her lips twitch. "You're afraid of your housekeeper?" Any man with sense would be. She once chased off rustlers with nothing but a broom and her Scottish temper. Vivian weighed her options. She had exactly $2.16 to her name, which wouldn't get her far. And Wilcox knew everyone in town. She wouldn't find safe lodging elsewhere. "Just until tomorrow," she finally said. "Then I'll be on my way." Cole nodded. "Fair enough." The ride to his ranch took nearly an hour, the landscape opening up from the dusty confines of town to rolling hills dotted with juniper and sage. His property wasn't large, but it was well maintained, a modest house, a barn, corrals, and a bunkhouse for the handful of ranch hands he employed. Mrs. Holloway proved to be exactly as described, a tiny Scottish woman with iron gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude who welcomed Vivian without question, fed her the best stew she'd tasted in years, and showed her to a clean, comfortable room with a lock that worked. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need," Cole told her as she prepared to retire for the night. "We can always use an extra pair of hands around here if you're looking for work." "I'll be moving on tomorrow," she said firmly. "But thank you for the offer." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Sleep well, Miss Murphy." But moving on proved more complicated than expected. Word reached the ranch the next morning that Wilcox had sworn to the sheriff that she'd stolen $20 from the till, a hanging offense in these parts. The sheriff, while skeptical, would need to question her. "This is ridiculous," she fumed, pacing Cole's sitting room. "I didn't take anything that wasn't owed to me." "I believe you," Cole said simply. "But Wilcox has influence in town. The sheriff's up for re-election next month. So I'm just supposed to run again?" The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. She was tired of running, tired of starting over. "Or you could stay here," Cole suggested. "Work for fair wages, give things time to settle down. Wilcox will eventually find someone new to torment." She studied him suspiciously. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." "I know enough," he replied. "I know you stood your ground against a man twice your size with a gun. That takes courage. And Mrs. Holloway likes you. She's an excellent judge of character." Against her better judgment, Vivian agreed to stay just for a week or two, she told herself, just until the situation with Wilcox resolved itself. Those weeks stretched into a month, then two. She proved herself useful around the ranch, helping Mrs. Holloway with household tasks and even learning to assist with the horses. Cole was fair, respectful, and kept a polite distance that she appreciated. She learned bits and pieces about him, that he'd fought for the Union in the war, that he'd built this ranch from nothing over the past 5 years, that he was respected in the territory for his fair dealings and steady nerve. His ranch hands spoke highly of him, and even Mrs. Holloway, stern as she was, treated him with unmistakable affection. Summer faded toward autumn, bringing cooler evenings that found Vivian and Cole sitting on the porch after dinner, watching the sun paint the western sky in fiery hues. "Will you tell me what you're running from?" he asked one evening, breaking their comfortable silence. She stiffened. "What makes you think I'm running from something?" His gaze remained on the distant mountains. "The way you watch the roads. The way you flinch at unexpected noises. The nightmares Mrs. Holloway says wake you screaming." Heat flamed in her cheeks. "She had no right. She's worried about you." "So am I." Vivian stood abruptly. "I don't need your worry or your pity." "It's not pity, Vivian." The way he said her name softly, almost reverently, made her pause. "It's concern. For someone I've come to care about." "Don't," she whispered. "Don't care about you? It won't end well." She wrapped her arms around herself. "Nothing ever does." He rose, standing close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him in the cool evening air. "Maybe you've just never given anything a chance to end well. You don't know what you're talking about." "Then tell me." His voice was gentle, but there was steel beneath it. "Let me understand." "The dam broke." Words poured out of her about her husband, Thomas, who'd seemed so kind and charming during their brief courtship in St. Louis, who'd turned vicious and controlling after their wedding. How he'd isolated her from family and friends, how the beatings began, how he'd punished her for imagined slights and transgressions. "He would have killed me eventually," she said, her voice hollow. "So I ran, in the middle of the night, with nothing but the clothes on my back. He swore he'd find me. Is that why you move from town to town?" She nodded. "He has money, connections. I never stay anywhere long enough for him to track me down." She laughed bitterly. Though Wilcox nearly did the job for him, Cole's expression had darkened with each word. "He has no right to you. No man has the right to treat a woman that way. The law says otherwise. He's my husband. The law isn't always right." He reached out, hesitating before gently taking her hand. "You deserve better, Vivian. You deserve safety, respect, and a life without fear." She pulled her hand away. "It doesn't matter what I deserve. This is my reality. It doesn't have to be." She shook her head. "You don't understand. Then help me understand." Over the following weeks, she did. She told him of her childhood in Missouri, her dreams of adventure that had led her to marry a man who promised to show her the world, only to become her jailer instead. She spoke of the 3 terrifying years of her marriage, and the past 2 years on the run. In turn, Cole shared his own story, his youth in Pennsylvania, the horrors he'd witnessed during the war, his journey west seeking peace and purpose. How he'd worked as a ranch hand, a tracker, even briefly as a deputy before saving enough to claim his own piece of land. "I've seen the worst of humanity," he told her one evening as they rode the boundaries of his property. "But I've also seen the best. People who sacrifice everything for others, who stand up for what's right even when it costs them dearly." "And which are you?" she asked, only half teasing. He smiled. "Just a man trying to do better today than he did yesterday." The winter of 1873 came early and harsh to Wyoming territory. Heavy snows isolated the ranch for days at a time, creating an unexpected intimacy as the household turned inward. Evenings were spent around the fireplace, Cole reading aloud, Vivian mending or knitting, Mrs. Holloway telling tales of her childhood in the Scottish Highlands. It was during one such evening, with a blizzard howling outside the windows, that Vivian realized with startling clarity that she had come to love this quiet, steadfast man. The realization terrified her. Love had only brought her pain before. Love had been the trap that nearly destroyed her. Yet this felt different. Cole never tried to control her, never raised his voice in anger, never made her feel less than his equal. He valued her opinions, respected her boundaries, and seemed to take genuine joy in her growing confidence and strength. But loving him put him in danger. Thomas had resources, connections. If he ever traced her here, he wouldn't hesitate to eliminate anyone who stood in his way. When spring finally arrived, melting the snow and opening the roads, Vivian made her decision. She would leave before her presence brought disaster to this place that had become a sanctuary, to these people who had become dear to her. She packed her few belongings before dawn one morning in early April. Cole found her preparing to slip away just as the first light painted the eastern horizon. "You're leaving," he said simply, no accusation in his voice, just a quiet sadness. "I have to." She couldn't meet his eyes. "No, you don't. You don't understand. I understand that you're scared. I understand that you think you're protecting me by leaving." He stepped closer. "But what if I don't want to be protected? What if I want to stand with you, whatever comes?" "You can't." "Why not?" "Because he'll kill you." The words burst from her. "Thomas will hunt me forever, and he'll destroy anyone who helps me." "Let him try," Cole said, his voice steady and certain. "I'm not afraid of him." "You should be." "I am. You don't have to face him alone anymore." She shook her head desperately. "You'll regret loving me." "Everyone does." Cole reached out, gently lifting her chin until she met his gaze. "Then I'll live with joyful regret," he said softly. "Because loving you, Vivian, is worth any risk." The words pierced her heart like an arrow. "How can you say that? You barely know me." "I know enough." His hand moved to cup her cheek. "I know you're brave and strong. I know you face each day with determination despite everything you've endured. I know that when you finally allow yourself to smile, it's like watching the sun rise." Tears filled her eyes. "I can't ask you to put your life in danger for me." "You're not asking. I'm offering." He took her hands in his. "Stay, Vivian. Not as my employee, not as a woman in hiding, but as my partner. Let's build something together that's worth fighting for. And when Thomas finds me, we'll face him together. This is my home, my territory. I have friends here, people who would stand with us." She wanted desperately to believe him, to imagine a future where she wasn't constantly looking over her shoulder. "1 month," she finally said. "I'll stay 1 more month. Then we'll see." Cole nodded, relief evident in his eyes. 1 month. It was 2 weeks later that the letter arrived from St. Louis. Mrs. Holloway brought it to Vivian with a puzzled expression. "How would anyone know to find you here?" the housekeeper asked. Vivian's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a brief note from her former neighbor in St. Louis, a kind elderly woman who had sometimes slipped her food when Thomas had locked her in their home as punishment. "Dearest Vivian," it read, "I pray this reaches you, though I do not know if the address I discovered in Thomas's study is correct. I write with news that may bring you peace. Thomas died 3 months ago of apoplexy. The doctors say his temper finally caught up with him. You are free, my dear. His family has no interest in pursuing you. Come home if you wish, or make a new life wherever you are. You are finally safe. With affection, Eleanor Simmons." The letter fluttered from her fingers. Cole, who had been watching her face, was at her side in an instant. "Vivian? What is it?" "He's dead," she whispered, disbelief warring with a terrible surge of relief. Thomas is dead. That night, for the first time in years, Vivian slept without nightmares. The weight that had pressed on her chest for so long had lifted, leaving her almost dizzy with the newfound lightness. But with that freedom came uncertainty. With no need to hide, no reason to fear, what would she do now? Where would she go? Cole found her at sunrise, standing on the porch, watching the light spill across the land that had become more home to her than any place she'd known before. You could stay, he said softly, coming to stand beside her. Not because you have to, but because you want to. She turned to him. Is that what you want? You know it is. His gaze held her steadily. I love you, Vivian. I have for months. But I need you to stay because you want a life here, with me, not because you're afraid or because you have nowhere else to go. And if I left? Pain flickered in his eyes, but he straightened his shoulders. Then I'd wish you well and hope that someday, if you wanted, you might find your way back. She studied his face, the strong lines of his jaw, the kindness in his eyes, the slight nervous tension in his expression as he waited for her answer. I don't know if I know how to be happy, she admitted. I'm not sure I remember what it feels like to plan for a future instead of just surviving each day. We could learn together, he suggested. Take each day as it comes. She thought of all the reasons to leave, the uncertainty, the lingering fear, the scars that might never fully heal. But then she thought of all the reasons to stay, the peace she'd found here, the strength she'd rediscovered in herself, and this man who looked at her broken pieces and saw something precious. I do love you, she whispered, the words feeling strange and wonderful on her lips. I think I have for a long time. The smile that broke across his face was like dawn after the longest night. He reached for her slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. Instead, she stepped into his embrace, feeling his arms encircle her with gentle strength. Does that mean you'll stay? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Yes, she said. I'll stay. Their first kiss was tentative, sweet, a promise rather than a demand. When they parted, both were smiling. Mrs. Holloway will be insufferable, Cole said with a laugh. She's been dropping hints for months that I should propose to you. Propose? Vivian's eyes widened. He looked suddenly uncertain. Not that I'm assuming, I mean, we have time. We can take things slowly. She silenced him with another kiss. Ask me again in the autumn, she murmured against his lips. By then, I'll be ready to say yes. Summer passed in a golden haze of work and laughter and increasingly confident touches. Cole was patient, never pushing, always letting her set the pace of their growing relationship. They spoke openly about her fears, his hopes, the future they might build together. In September, Wilcox was caught cheating at cards and fled town one step ahead of a lynch mob. Sheriff Jenkins, re-elected despite Wilcox's opposition, told Vivian she was welcome in Crimson Creek anytime. In October, Cole took her to the highest point of his land, where they could see for miles in every direction. There, with the aspens blazing gold in the valleys below, he knelt and offered her a simple gold band. I can't promise a perfect life, he said, but I can promise to love you faithfully, to respect you always, to stand with you through whatever comes, and to wake each morning grateful that you chose to share your life with mine. Yes, she said through happy tears. 1,000 times yes. They married in November, a small ceremony with Mrs. Holloway, the ranch hands, and a few trusted friends from town as witnesses. The old Scottish woman wept openly, claiming it was about time they made it official. That night, as they lay together in what was now their bedroom, Vivian traced the line of Cole's jaw with gentle fingers. Are you happy? He asked softly. More than I ever imagined possible, she admitted. But sometimes I still wonder if you'll regret loving me. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. The only regret I'll ever have is that I didn't find you sooner, before you had to endure so much pain. Perhaps we found each other exactly when we were meant to. Perhaps. He pulled her closer, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. All I know is that loving you has brought me more joy than I thought possible in this life, and any regrets are a small price to pay for that joy. As the years passed, their ranch prospered. They added onto the house, hired more hands, and became known throughout the territory for their fair dealings and generosity. Cole served 2 terms as sheriff after Jenkins retired, bringing a steady justice to Crimson Creek that earned him respect from settlers and native tribes alike. In 1875, they welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Elizabeth, after Vivian's grandmother. A son, James, followed 2 years later. Both children grew strong and confident, surrounded by love and taught to value courage, kindness, and integrity above all else. There were difficult times, of course, harsh winters that threatened their livelihood, conflicts with newcomers who didn't understand the delicate peace Cole had helped forge with neighboring tribes, the lingering nightmares that occasionally still haunted Vivian's sleep. But they faced each challenge together, their bond only strengthening with each obstacle overcome. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Cole presented Vivian with a journal he'd kept since the day they met, chronicling their journey together. The final entry read, "10 years ago, the most remarkable woman I've ever known told me I would regret loving her. She was wrong. Loving Vivian has been the greatest privilege of my life, and any regrets I might have felt have been transformed into joys beyond measure. Here's to 10 more years, and 10 more after that, of living with joyful regret." Tears blurred her vision as she closed the journal and looked up at the man who had taught her to trust again, to hope again, to love without fear. "Any regrets?" he asked, his smile gentle. Vivian thought of all they'd built together, the home, the family, the life filled with purpose and love. She thought of the frightened woman she'd been, convinced that happiness would forever be denied her. And she thought of the day she'd finally found the courage to stay rather than run. "Not one," she said, reaching for his hand. "Not a single regret." As the Wyoming sun set on their decade together, painting the sky in the same fiery colors that had welcomed her to this land, Vivian Murphy Osborne finally understood that some risks were worth taking, some battles worth fighting, and some loves, the rarest and truest kind, worth every sacrifice they demanded. In Cole's steadfast love, she had found not just safety but freedom. In his arms, she had discovered not just passion but peace. And in the life they'd built together, she had finally found what she'd been searching for all along, not just a place to hide, but a place to belong.